Okay, so this is Rob Lett here. Want to get started. We haven't met in a few weeks, and so I want to record quite a few webinars to get us back on track. Hopefully you guys can see my screen here. I want to, first of all, thank you guys for being patient, because I know it's been hectic with my new travel schedule and everything. I've been trying to fit a lot of different things into my schedule. I gained some weight. I gained some weight from running a large team before, because I used to do so many things on a laptop and just sitting on a laptop all the time, being on the internet, and managing a team of several hundred people across so many states that I picked up some weight. So now, because I've been a national trainer before, I know what that life is like, being on the road and trying to, eat healthy. It's not just, most of the time, it's not going to happen. You're eating at these crazy restaurants, nice restaurants, but not the best food in terms of your health, and very little time for exercise. So between doing the webinars for our team, and between figuring out how I'm going to be able to eat right and do all kind of stuff, not to mention personal family time, it's been an adjustment. But I think I've got it down. So I'm figured out how we're going to do this. So where we left off was, I think the last time that we did a webinar, and let me recap for those of you who are new as to how you're going to be able to locate the Google Drive. I think everyone knows how to locate the Google Drive, but just in case you don't, let me show you. When you go, let me start from scratch here so you can see what I'm talking about. If you have a Google account, then all this stuff makes sense. Like if you have a Gmail account or something like that, then it makes sense. If not, then let me know. If you don't, like if you got a Yahoo account or something else, then you have to click on the shared link that I send to you. But when you go into, when you log into your own Gmail account, you should see that there's a folder here. Like you see, I'm logged in here with my Gmail. When you log into yours, you should see that there's a folder here that says Shared with Me. When you click on Shared with Me, the folder that you want to go into so that you can see the webinars that we've done in the past, team calls, podcasts, all that kind of stuff, you'll want to go into Team Recording. You should see something that says Team Recording. Okay. Well, actually, let me go back one. I think, yep, even before that, my apologies. The folder you should see is Team Training, okay? So you go under Team Training, and when you go under Team Training, then you will see that there's a file here called Team Recordings, okay? And when you go under Team Recordings, come on, computer, it's taking too long. When you go into Team Recordings, you should see a list. There we go. You should see a list. We've been doing this since March of 2017. You should see a list of different conference calls. You can see we started off our team doing conference calls. So you can pretty much see we're doing something pretty much every week. Occasionally there'll be a webinar in between there. And then when we got right around to August, which is when I started doing national travels, you can see it started getting a little sketchy there. So I'm going to go back and fill in these. But last time we left off here, we talked about practical applications to real estate term strategies, okay? And so what I'm getting ready to do, and then I did give you one here, understanding lease option agreements. So I did a few weeks back, did give you a webinar about lease option agreements, and those folders, those contracts and agreements are in a new folder that I created. So I'll show you where that is. But in between here, just to get us back on track, I wanted to show you another example of how powerful real estate terms could be, because everyone focuses on fix and flip all the time. That just bothers me. Nothing wrong with fix and flip. There's a lot of money in it. It's plentiful. That's great. But if you're thinking, wow, I really don't have the bandwidth, I really don't have the team for fix and flips or the knowledge base to understand repairs, then what do I do as a real estate investor? Don't feel discouraged. Don't feel dismayed, because real estate is so wide and so deep in terms of its scope. So I'm going to show you several things to encourage you and get you reinvigorated, excited about real estate investing, okay? So what I'm going to do is show you today what I'm going to be covering, and that's going to go right here, updated with additional terms applications. I'm going to go here by telling you a story of how I started to market my mother's home in Birmingham, Alabama. I'll tell you the whole backdrop as to what happened experience-wise in my life and what led me to wanting to put together this deal the way I did. It's pretty exciting. So hopefully you got a pen and some paper. You can take good notes. I'm expecting to get a few questions from this. You guys don't ask very many questions. I rarely get very many emails or texts from you guys. Every once in a while I do, but I think today's webinar will make you re-question some stuff because this is pretty powerful. And then after I finish that, I think I've at least given you enough to understand how powerful terms can be. I'm going to give you what you guys have been asking for, which is an owner finance agreement. So I'm going to walk you through an owner finance agreement. I'm not going to go through every single clause. And the reason why is because then I start becoming a borderline attorney. I'm not trying to be an attorney. That's what the whole purpose of you having an attorney is for. The only thing I want to do is give you the construct of what an owner finance agreement looks like, you know, what type of information you put in it. Everything else you want to bounce off your attorney to say, hey, just make sure this is, there's nothing in there quirky for my state's guidelines because you guys are in different states, okay? All right, so I'm going to do that. Talk about terms. I'm going to give you a contract overview of owner financing, and some of you are curious about what I'm doing when I'm on the road. I'm doing some stuff, as I mentioned, for real estate reality shows, real estate reality show. I am only, it's kind of crazy because my travel schedule, I spend more time on the plane, more time traveling with a rental car than I actually do working. It's kind of funny because I'm only speaking twice a day. We do a morning session, and then we do an evening session, and each time I'm only speaking 45 minutes. So technically I'm only working like 90 minutes a day. But what I'm talking about are tax lien certificates. One of my colleagues, he does the real estate section, and then I do, which is tax liens are still real estate. It's just an offshoot of real estate. But I tell them why you want to get into tax lien certificates. So since I don't want to give strangers a benefit that you guys or my team don't have, I want to share with you what I'm actually showing them on the road, okay? So that way you feel like you got an inside scoop. So you should see when you come back, by the time you watch some of these videos, look for August 23rd, August 30th, and September 13th to be filled in with some sort of link for you to be able to watch these videos. And we will get caught back up here. I do realize that by the time you watch this today, you're still going to have a couple of blanks, okay? All right, so just wanted to show you how to find that. Let me show you where you're going to find the agreements, okay? Where are they? Okay, right in here, you should see that there's a folder here that says agreements. And when you click on that, that's a new folder, by the way. And that's where I'm going to put all the agreements. So we covered some stuff on lease options, remember. So I put a couple of different agreements in here. So you'll see buying with lease option, buying with options, and I'll cover some of these other things that I put in here. I put selling with lease option and also options. The other stuff that I'm going to cover is talking about agreement for deed, affidavit of we'll talk about affidavits, and we'll talk about notices. We'll get back to that. I just wanted to let you know where you can find them, okay? All right, so now let's get into it. Let me minimize this stuff and get into it. All right, so this is going to feel like story time, okay? All right, so I got to give you, before I give you the creative strategies that we're going to cover, I just want to show you, I want to give you the backdrop of how I learn stuff. This is why it's important to get involved in real estate, because the more you get involved in real estate, the more you start learning things as you go. And each one of those things that you learn, you have an epiphany of like, wow, I didn't realize that. And before you know it, every one of those little steps that you've learned in your career can culminate into some really, really powerful deals. Here's a perfect example, okay? So I bought a house. In Decatur, Georgia. For those of you who live in Georgia, you know where I'm talking about. Bought a house. That's what I was trying to type. So I bought a house in Decatur, Georgia. Okay. And when I bought this house, this was way back when I wasn't really educated as a real estate investor. I wanted to be a real estate investor, but I wasn't quite there yet. I bought it the traditional way. I bought it with putting my own money down, using my own credit, all that kind of stuff, right? And so I bought that house, and then later on, I lived there for a few years or so. Later on, as I became a real estate investor, I was kicking myself because I realized, wow, how naive I was. I didn't, I saved my own money. I used my own credit. I even had the house in my own name and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, why would I do that now? Realizing that so many people are willing to give you properties. Why in the world would I do that and put all that money into it? And so then I told my attorney, I said, you know what, I want to sell that house and never do that again. And so he helped me sell it. But while I was selling it, putting it on the market, there were some things that I was learning. So here's a few examples of some things that I was learning. Okay, I sold it to this couple. The couple was not married. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this story. I sold it to this couple. The couple was not married, and so at the time that they moved in, they qualified for most of the purchase price. I think they qualified for like 90% of it or something. So some of you know, and I'll just make up some numbers here because I can't remember all the numbers. Okay, so let's just say hypothetically, let's just say you got a $100,000 house, right? And let's just say that the buyers qualify for 90% of it, right? Then that would mean that if you're selling the house for $100,000, then that would mean that your buyers qualify for a $90,000 loan, but you're selling the house for $100,000, so we got a problem, right? They're a little bit short. So back in those days, we don't hear that much about it nowadays, but back in those days, if the person didn't qualify for the full amount, then that would mean your buyers would have to get a second mortgage for the remaining difference. In this case, the remaining $10,000, okay? Second mortgage. Okay. Now, I'd never done this before at the time. This was, again, that was early on in my career. So that meant the buyers, they already qualified for a $90,000 loan, but in order for them to qualify for the full purchase price of the house, then that means I, as the seller, was going to have to take a $10,000 second mortgage, or IOU. Okay. And so, the mortgage company was explaining this to me. Hey, they are qualified, but we need you to hold a 10% second, $10,000 second. If you're willing to do that, we'll sell them the house. And I said, okay, sure, awesome, I'll do this. Okay, so I did it, and so this was my first, one of my first interesting lessons about doing real estate. I knew what a second mortgage was. I knew what that meant. If you don't know what this means, let me explain a couple of things to you. Okay, I'm going to assume that there's certain things you don't know. Now, this $90,000 loan here, this would be called if I'm called a second mortgage, what do you think this is called? This will be called a first mortgage. Okay. Now here's what happens in the realm of first and second and third mortgages, etc. The mortgage that takes priority is the first mortgage. In other words, if there's anything here that needs to be paid, it's the first mortgage. Okay. If the first mortgage isn't paid, the first mortgage can foreclose and it can wipe out the second or any other subsequent mortgages. Okay. Now keep in mind, the second mortgage can foreclose too. The second mortgage can foreclose. The only difference is the second mortgage is not going to wipe out the first mortgage. Okay. The first mortgage would need to be paid. In other words, no matter what, the first mortgage takes priority. I'm just giving you that backdrop. I'm assuming you don't know this, okay? I already did know that I was taking a second mortgage, and I'm inferior, if you will, to the first mortgage. But I already knew how to handle that because I was used to, if you remember, when we started getting into real estate terms, I taught you guys about a strategy called subject to. Remember that? A strategy where you acquire properties, you take over a seller's existing debt. You're not qualifying for it. You're not giving your Social Security number to the mortgage company. They're just taking over that existing debt. You'll make the same payments. You'll have the same ownership and everything. The only difference is you didn't have to qualify for it. You get the same tax write-offs. You can sell it. You can rent it. You can move into it, right? Hopefully you understand that concept of subject to. So when I used to buy a property, back then when I was buying property subject to, one of the things you always did when you bought a property subject to from a stranger is you made sure that you got all of the information about this first mortgage. You wanted their loan number. You wanted the mortgage company's 800 number so that you can call. You wanted a letter of authorization so that your seller signs an authorization letting the mortgage company know to speak to you about their loan. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get any information about that seller's loan. Okay, I got to explain all of this stuff. Okay, so I already knew I was comfortable enough with understanding subject to, and so anyway, I wasn't worried about taking a second mortgage because I knew how to get authorizations to speak to this mortgage company and make sure that those payments are made. Great. So I'm selling the property. I got a second mortgage. If I remember correctly, the payments on my second mortgage to me, the payments that they made to me on my second mortgage was something like, I'll say $200, okay? I think it was more than that, maybe $250, but I'll just say $200, okay? So at some point, you know, they buy the house from me. You know, they're rocking along, et cetera, because the only thing I was really trying to do at that time was pay off my underlying loan anyway. I just wanted to get the loan out of my name. I did make some money at closing. I think I made like $30,000 or something like that. But I still had this second mortgage. Great. So I got this second mortgage, and I'm getting these payments of $200 a month like clockwork. And then one day, out of the blue, the girlfriend calls me, or the woman calls me at the house. And she calls me and she says, Rob, do you have any other properties that I might be able to move into? And keep in mind, I'm concerned at this point because they were due to be engaged. And here's the woman calling me privately, asking me if I have another property that she can move into by herself. And I'm like, sure, you know, I got other properties. And I'm like, are you okay? And she says, yeah, I'm okay. But, you know, this guy is, he's cheating. I found out he's cheating on me, and I can't take it. I need to find a place of my own. And I said, okay. And I said, you know, I'll look and see if, you know, I got some things in your price range, et cetera. And so we talked, and I hung up the phone, and instantly I'm concerned. Why am I concerned? I'm concerned because, you know, they bought the property from me based on how many incomes. Two, husband and wife, right? And so he doesn't know this, but I know because I got the inside track that he bought a property that he thought he could afford based on two incomes, but how many incomes is he about to have now? He's about to have one, which means that my second payment, the payment that comes to my second mortgage, I'm already predicting in my head, that means I'm going to have some problems receiving my $200 a month. Right? And so for a while there, after the lady moved out, sure enough, you know, payments were coming in, but then sure enough, just like I predicted, that $200 was dribbling in later and later and later into the month. And then finally it got to the point that I had to give him a call. And I said, hey, man, I said, I'm giving you a call. I said, I'm checking on you. I said, you know, I understand what happened. You know, things happen. Sorry to hear that, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, we got to work out something here because, you know, the mortgage has to be paid. And, you know, I really don't want to foreclose or anything like that, but we got to figure out something. And, you know, he was all apologetic and everything, but, you know, he didn't have the money. And so I was in a mastermind group back then of, you know, 6 real estate investors. We were all full-time. And this is the reason why education is so powerful. You know, all of us were full-time real estate investors. I was a pretty house guy. Some of the guys in my group were wholesalers buying ugly houses. And one of the guys on our team was an older gentleman, probably in his 60s or so. And so it's always good to have someone who's got experience, been doing some things longer than you. And so I was already calling my attorney. I was already anticipating the foreclosure and everything. And I was mentioning this to the guy in our group. His name was Arnold. And I said, man, this guy isn't paying me. I'm going to have to foreclose. And Arnold, in his wisdom, he says to me, he says, Rob, have you offered him, how am I trying to phrase this? Have you asked him, will he move? That's basically what he said. Have you asked him, will he move? And I looked at Arnold like he was crazy. I'm like, what do you mean have I asked him to move? I'm like, no, I haven't asked him to move. And he says, well, I mean, it would be cheaper, for you to ask him to move and pay for a moving truck than paying an attorney. You're going to spend a few $1,000s to foreclose. It's a whole lot cheaper to just ask him if he would move, pay for the moving trucks, maybe 40, 50 bucks or whatever it is, and maybe the guy will move. And I said, well, why would he do that? And he says, because you could make his life a living hell if you foreclose, you would damage his credit, all these different things. And he says, you know how to take a property back subject to. Just say, listen, I don't want to foreclose on you. I understand what you're going through. Hey, I'll even pay for the moving truck. See what he says. And then I was quiet. And I was like, wow, that's so simple. I would have never even thought of it. And so I said, okay. So I call up the guy, call up my buyer, and I say, hey, I understand what happened. I understand you're trying to struggle and, pay this. And I don't want to foreclose. I don't want to mess your credit up and all this kind of stuff. And I said, tell you what, this is my business anyway. I buy houses all the time. I take over existing debt. I tell you what, if you will leave the house in good condition, don't mess anything up, and if you'll come to the law offices and sign some paperwork with my attorney, I tell you what, I'll take the property back just as it is, won't even report anything to your credit, and we'll just keep it moving, and you can start your life over. And I said, how would that work for you? And he said, sure. And, man, I was amazed. I was shocked. Here I was ready to go to war and didn't have to. He said, sure. And so I called my attorney up. I was like, hey, let's prepare some paperwork. He's going to deed the property back to me, right? And he's going to deed the property back to me. I don't remember what the payments were on this. I don't remember what the payments were. Again, it was so long ago. I don't remember what the payments were on this particular mortgage. But I knew I was going to take over those payments. He was going to give me the deed. So keep in mind, I used to live there, right? I used to live in the house. He gave me the deed. I owned the property that I used to live in, but if you understand subject to, it was kind of powerful. I own the same property that I used to live in, only this time I'm not liable for the payments. I'm like, wow, it's not going to damage my credit at all. And so I took the property back, ended up selling that property and everything. Great deal. All right? So I know you're like, where are you going with this story? You'll see in a second. Okay? So, excuse me, I'm drinking some coffee here. One of the things that that was interesting to me when I was going through this is the fact that I was a second mortgage company. Back then, when I heard of second mortgages or third mortgages or whatever, I had always just assumed that if a person or company was a second mortgage company or a first mortgage company for that matter, I had assumed that they had loaned the buyer some money. I mean, that's what you call it, right? A bank loan, a mortgage. And one of the things that it just hit me all of a sudden is, wow, I have a $10,000 second mortgage on a property. I mean, I was even recorded on title and everything, but I knew I had never given that buyer anything. So in other words, it's almost as though I had printed money out of thin air. We had just agreed on a purchase price. He agreed to buy for that purchase price, and all of a sudden, because it was an IOU, that IOU that I just created out of my mind, once it got recorded, it actually turned into cash. And I said, wow, this is like having a money press. I just printed money. Hopefully you'll follow me on that. So that's one thing I was amazed by, that I could actually be a second mortgage holder without lending anyone any money. The second thing that I was also amazed at, too, was, maybe I shouldn't say amazed, I just didn't see it because I was too close to the deal. I was accustomed to buying properties subject to, when it was a stranger involved, right? I meet a stranger, they're trying to sell their house, I take over their existing debt. The reason why I was having problems comprehending this deal is because I used to own it, right? I couldn't see that this was the same type of deal that I'd always done because I was too close to it. I didn't really realize, hey, I could take over this existing loan. And so I was like, okay, I get it now. I ended up getting my same property back. All right, hopefully you followed all that. I know I said a lot, but here's the reason why I had to give you that backdrop. Because this ended up being such a powerful deal with my mom. Okay? So my mom, let me type this here. So my mom has a house, or had a house, in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay? So she's got this house, and here's the situation. My mom lived there in Birmingham, Alabama. She had bought this house. I don't remember what she had paid for it. It doesn't really matter what she had paid for it at the time. But the property at this point, was worth $250,000. Whatever it is she paid for it, I know the payments were $1,200. Okay, $1,200 a month. Okay, yeah, payments of $1,200 a month. Okay, so my mom remarried, and when she remarried, she had moved to Florida, and so she had been trying to sell this property. She had been trying to sell this property. It's an older property, so it's not really updated, but it's still a nice property. You know, it's still a very nice property, good sizable property. But she had been having some problems. She'd been renting it, but she didn't want to be an out-of-state landlord. She was really trying to sell it. And it just wasn't working out. Some of the people who were in there looked like they were going to probably end up causing more damage to the property than worth, and she's out of state. And so so my mom kept trying to sell this property, and she had a real estate agent who was, trying to help her sell it, and it wasn't working out. And in between, of course, what was my mom's real problem? Just think about it for a second. She's out of state. What's concerning my mom? What's concerning my mom is this. She's got 1,200 problems every month, right? So here she is making payments on a vacant house while she's in another state. And so finally, I'm watching my mom go through this for 6 months with some agent, and it's not selling. And then she relists with another agent at a different price, and it's not selling. And finally, it's killing me. You guys acknowledge that I actually know something about real estate, but you know how family is. Family never listens to you, right? And so I'm sitting there watching my mom go through all this, and finally I can't take it anymore. And I said, Mom, why don't you let me help you sell the house? And she says, okay. And anyway, I tried one thing where it was like a lease option. I won't get into the whole thing. I took her down. But we got a whole bunch of leads. We got a whole bunch of people interested, but it still didn't pan out because the people didn't have the best credit, okay? And so finally, one day I went to this seminar because, believe it or not, even though I train people, I too go to continuing education. That's how I stay on the cutting edge of my craft. I went to this seminar, and people always ask me what this strategy is called. I don't know what this strategy is called. I just know the ad that we ran when we were in class. We ran this ad, and I remember thinking that the ad was a funny ad, and the instructor is a guy who'd been doing real estate for over 30-something years at the time, and probably longer than that. But anyway, the ad that he talked about in class was when people have a lot of equity in their house, he says, here's an ad that you can run. And the ad, the headline was something like, live above your means. Live in a, pick a number. Live in a $500,000 house for payments of $600 a month. And I remember when we was talking about it in class, I was like, how the heck can you do that? The numbers didn't even add up, right? And so when we went through the math of it in class, I said, holy smokes, this has got my mom's deal written all over it. And so I got excited. And so I called my mom after we had been trying to do the lease option thing. And I told my mom, I said, here's how we're going to sell your house. And I went through all of this stuff. I explained it to my mom. And let me explain to you the ad that I ran for my mom's house. This was awesome. So we already said that the problem here is my mom has $1,200 payments per month, right? So yes, obviously she wants to make some money when selling this house. But what's my mom's most immediate problem? The most immediate problem is she's bleeding, right? She's bleeding $1,200 a month. So we got to figure out how to make that stop, okay? So here was my plan. The plan was the loan that my mom had on the house. Let me use a different color here. Okay, so the loan that my mom had on the house, by now, because she lived in it for a while, the loan was down to like $98,000, okay? So, yes, she still had $1,200 payments because you know how fixed loans work. It doesn't matter what your loan balance is. You still have those payments from when you bought it, right? So she still had $1,200 a month. The loan was down to about $98,000. And so If you remember when we went through fix and flip and started talking about, how you figure out what's a good deal to get a private loan from lenders or et cetera, what determines if it's a good deal? It's something called LTV, loan to value, right? So hopefully if you need to go back and study that, you can go back and study that. So I started looking at that. I said, okay, so all I really have to do to get this $1,200 problem to go away is I need to find someone who could qualify for at least a $98,000 loan. Does that make sense? Okay. And so how hard is that? What LTV is that? Well, $98,000, if you guys don't know how to do this math, it's $98,000. What is $98,000 of $250,000? Okay. So you'll realize that that represents a 39% LTV. Is that good? Heck yeah, that's good. That's really good. Okay, so you should be able to get a loan. Anyone should be able to get a loan for that because there's no risk in whoever's giving that loan. There's no risk in them losing their money when they give a $98,000 loan on a $250,000 house. Great. So I got excited. I was like, okay, I see how this can work. Because if I can just get someone qualified for that $98,000 loan, my mom does not have to make $1,200 payments. That person, they start making payments on a brand new loan. So I accomplished step one, which is killing off the payments. So the second part of this, now let's go over here to the internet. The second part of this was, and you guys probably already know this, second part of this was I went to bankrate.com. Bankrate.com gives you an idea of what the current mortgage rates are at the time. So if I scroll down here, obviously we're in 2017. This did not happen in 2017. I'm just walking you through what my thought process was. Today, you can see here 30-year fixed, 3.78%, right? That's flat rate. Fixed mortgage. If it's 15 years, you can see that. Anyway, back then, I believe the interest rate was something like 5%, okay? So, great. So now I know that it's a $98,000 loan at 5%. What type of payments would my buyer have? Great. So now, sliding over here 2 more notches, now you guys should be familiar with this. This is amortization calculator. So I took the $98,000, I put in a 5% interest rate over a 30-year ammo, and the calculator came back and said your buyer is going to have payments of about $526.09. And I said, awesome. Good. And so here, this is so genius. And so here is the ad that I ran. Ready for this? Okay. Here's the ad that I ran. Live above your means. Live in a $250,000 neighborhood for just $500 a month. Imagine seeing an ad like this. This is right out of the class. No, this is not a misprint. I'm selling my mom's 5-bedroom, 3-bath home located in the Monteduro subdivision for payments you can barely get in an apartment. This home is equipped with skylights, a 2-car garage, fenced backyard with a gazebo and in-ground koi pond in the back. Awesome schools, Green Valley Elementary and Lewis Bazitz Middle School. Why are you still reading this? A 5-bedroom, $250,000 house for payments of just $500 a month? Call me now and get over here before it's gone. Is that an awesome ad or what? Heck yeah, it's an awesome ad. Do you think I got calls? Do you think I got emails? Yes. And what do you think everyone who emailed me, everyone who called me, what do you think their question was to me? Their question was, what's the catch, right? Or is this real? And I said, yes, it's real. I'm a real estate investor, so I know a lot of different creative ways to be able to sell a house. And so here's what I would explain to people on the phone. Okay, so, well, before I explain it, let me walk you through. So if my mom is selling this for $250,000, right, let's go back through and calculate what's her equity. Well, my mom's equity is $152,000. Do you understand that? $250,000 minus the $98,000, that means the amount that's due to my mom is $152,000, right? So when people call me and they're like, hey, is this real, or how can you do this? And I said, yes, it is real. I said, I'm a real estate investor. I'm helping my mom out here. And I said, here's the situation. My mom lives out of town. She's got a mortgage of about $98,000. I need someone to be able to pay that off and qualify for a $98,000 loan. $98,000 loan at 5%, your payments are about $526 a month. That's where the $500 or so comes in. When I'm talking about you making payments of $500 a month, that's where the 500 comes from, because that's going to be your new payment. Now, here's the catch. The catch is you can't have payments of $500 a month forever. My mom is selling this for $250,000, and she wants her money sometime soon. So I can give you a balloon, okay? In other words, I can give you 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, until you can refinance. In other words, if maybe you got some stuff on your credit that you have to work out, something like that, what $500 payments to you would allow you to do is it would allow you to save a ton of money so you can pay those bills off, clean up your credit blemish, and then in 5 years qualify for a $250,000 house, right? So at some point you will need to be able to buy a $250,000 house. But the benefit to you is in the meantime, for 4 years, 5 years, whatever my mom is willing to do, you get to live in a $250,000 fabulous neighborhood with very, very, very low payments, okay? Does this make sense? All you have to do is qualify for the $98,000 loan and know that there's a balloon here to where in so many years you're going to have to qualify for the full $250,000. Is that still an awesome deal? Absolutely, it's an awesome deal. Now look at all the numbers on the screen here and tell me, when I explained all this stuff to my mom, how I was putting it together, tell me, looking at the screen, what concern my mom was going to have, because her equity is $152,000, which means my mom was going to have to hold $152,000 second mortgage. So now that you can see all this, walk forward in your mind and tell me what objection my mom was going to have. I've given you enough time. Okay. The concern that my mom was going to have is when she looked at this, is she said, so what if they don't make payments, because she's going to have a second mortgage now. And she says, so what if they don't make payments on the first mortgage, on the $98,000, because she's going to be a second mortgage, right? Remember that I told you what I learned from my own experience, understanding second mortgages, that the second mortgage could get wiped out, right? And so my mom was like, yeah, but what happens if they don't make payments on the first mortgage? Then doesn't my $152,000 get wiped out? And I told my mom, listen to this. This is what's so powerful. I said, Mom, if they don't make payments on the first mortgage, get excited. Because if they don't make payments on the second mortgage, the lesson that I learned from when I went through this on my own home is you could threaten foreclosure, because your $152,000 loan is now in jeopardy, is it not? So she could do the exact same thing that I did. She could say, listen, my $152,000 is in jeopardy here, so I am going to file a foreclosure to get this property back. More often than not, rather than for them to risk their foreclosure and their credit and all those things being ruined, what my mom could have done is said, same thing that I did, listen, I don't want to drag you through court. I don't want to destroy your credit. Tell you what, I will provide for you a moving truck if you will just meet my attorney down at the office, deed the property back to me, and then you and I can part ways, no harm, no foul. You can live your life and start over, right? So I told my mom, I said, if they don't pay you, get excited, because then when you foreclose, if you take this, not foreclose, but when you take this property over subject to, I said, understand, your previous payments, Mom, here were $1,200 a month. Your new payments on that same $98,000 loan are $526 a month, right? 90 cents or something. And so I said, Mom, get excited. I said, if they don't pay you, you get the same house that you used to make payments of $1,200 a month on, but this time your mortgage payments are $526.90 a month, and you're not even liable for them. Heck, if you rent your same house out for the same thing that you used to pay in mortgage, you're going to make You're going to make $673 and whatever. You're going to make $673 profit per month, and you're not even liable for the house. What do you think my mom said to all that? You probably guessed it. My mom said, nope, too complicated. She said, no, all this stuff is too complicated. I don't want to do it. Eventually, we did sell the house, but we didn't sell it my way. I eventually did have to bring a real estate agent back into the fold. Keep in mind, neither one of us were living in Alabama. I'm living in Georgia. My mom's living in Florida. The house is in Alabama. I called a real estate agent and just say, you know what? Let's just do a traditional thing. This was years later after the crash and all this kind of stuff. So her value at this point had gone down in her house. It was nowhere near the $250,000. I can't remember what we sold it for. But anyway, I just wanted to show you. The reason why I showed you this deal is because I wanted to show you how powerful creative real estate terms are. Till this day, I don't think I've ever seen anyone run an ad as creative as that ad that I ran. That's powerful. Who in their right mind can run an ad for a $250,000 house and payments of $500 a month? Only Rob Lett, right? Even, like I said, my mom didn't even do the deal, but I had a blast putting it all together, constructing it, engineering it, okay? So let that marinate on that. Let that sink in because there's so many different lessons in that one deal. So hopefully that gave you some value. That gave you something to think about with how fun creative real estate terms can be. So look at how I started it, just trying to solve a problem for a seller. My mom's problem was she had payments that she can't sustain on a vacant house. How does she make that go away and get her equity at the same time? And because I could break down all of the components of the deal, I had to know what it was worth. I had to know what the loan balances were. I had to know what that LTV is to find out if it's realistic. I had to know what the interest rates would be. I had to know a thing about second mortgages and subject to. A lot of education had to come into play to be able to put this deal together, right? And I'm still excited about it, even though the deal never happened, just because I understood how it would work. Okay, so send me your questions if you wanna email them to me, if you want to text them to me, or whatever it is. But that's a powerful deal in my mind, a powerful way to construct a deal. So hopefully somewhere between understanding owner financing, between understanding lease options, between all these different things that we talked about, you can see some applications when you see sellers or even opportunities for you to buy something. All right, so that's it. So hopefully you got something out of that. So let me shut this down, and I'll make sure I get some other videos up for you guys. Talk to you soon.